It may not even lead to what you want. You can always take another step next. You can choose in 10-second increments, but step boldly. Take action. Show up for that one next thing. Even if it's like an hour of research is the one next thing. Go down that rabbit hole. See what you find. Explore and experience, because that's where the clarity will come from. I had to go deep into, I'm a hypnotherapist now, to realize that it was actually something past that was for me. And then remember, you're here for a reason. You are. You came into this body because you're supposed to be here, and you're having this episode show up in your life, or these new ideas and insights come into your life because they're for you. So trust that. Trust that this isn't an accident.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Jessica Carice, and this space is a place where we talk about seemingly random topics, but in all actuality, they're connected together. And today we have a very, very special guest. Her name is Molly Mandelberg. She's the founder of Wild Hearts Rise Up, the creator of Magnetic Influencer Collective, and also the writer and illustrator of the Wild Hearts Rise Up Oracle Deck. She's also host of both Tactical Magic podcast and Reveal the Game of Life podcast, as well as a best-selling author. She's a certified NLP coach, an access consciousness bars facilitator, and a transformational leadership coach. Molly, you do a lot. I'm so excited to jump into your story. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So let's dive in. So you do a lot. So tell me more about the Wild Hearts Rise Up and what your mission is and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, definitely. So Wild Hearts Rise Up is my sort of business mentoring enterprise, I guess you could say. I started my business about 10 years ago, and I was doing hypnotherapy at the time. And what I found was pretty early on, one was that I was tired of doing the induction, of talking really slow. I kind of am a fast talker. And two, people were tending to have big aha moments and transformational experiences before we even went into the hypnosis session. So organically, I kind of was finding myself led away from hypnosis as a modality itself, which is interesting now because I still do guided hypnosis and meditations all the time on my calls. But I was being led more towards the coaching sphere. And as I did, I was really present to this ceiling, or this sort of organic limit to how many people I could serve in any given day, in any given week, and thus in my life, if I were to continue working solely one-on-one. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that there was a limit on my income. I didn't like that there was a limit on my time availability. And so I started really early in my business looking at, what does a leveraged model look like? What does it look like to shift from one-to-one to one-to-many? And so I started going down many, many rabbit holes and investing a lot of money into mentorship and support, and learning how to lead workshops, how to speak to groups, how to sell courses and programs, and how to package them in a way that's effective and can guide people to the next offering. And so I went so deep into geeking out on that it sort of became my niche. And I now, for most of the last 10 years, I've been helping other healers, holistic practitioners, and coaches to shift from one-to-one to a one-to-many model, to figure out how to talk about what they do, even when they do something really far out and mystical and magical, and package it in a way that people who are meant for it are turned on and excited about saying yes to it. So that's the majority of what I've been doing with Wild Hearts Rise Up, is helping these wild-hearted change makers, light workers, healers, these really people who are passionate about changing other people's lives, helping them rise into their leadership, into their willingness to be visible, into their capacity to hold space for a lot more people than they maybe once thought possible.
That's incredible. That's really, really incredible. And it's interesting. Because like for myself, I always kept like my spirituality like kind of in the back burner, and like, you know, super super professional. And in my journey, in my entrepreneurship journey specifically, which started this year, I'm finding the more that I'm open about it, the more, you know, vulnerabilities I show, not necessarily like a sob stories, things I've overcome, the more connection I have with people. And so like I've made the decision to lead with the spiritual values and my spiritual practices, and as a complement to my business, you know, which is
Yeah.
project management and stuff like that. So like for the people that you help, like I guess how do you identify which of those healers or spiritual people that are actually willing to want to do that, to grow? Because I feel like sometimes there's a group that doesn't really want to be so income focused versus the one that's like, no, and it makes sense for me to grow my income so I can help more people.
Yeah, well, I'll say most of us, I'll say spiritual healer types have a lot of points of view about money, and it's easier to look at changing more lives and feel a desire and a big why around how many people can I serve versus how much money can I make from those people, which is definitely a beautiful angle to come at. The money concern, I think we have a lot of points of view that money is the root of all evil, or money is not spiritual. To be spiritual is to be, you know, a wandering ascetic who doesn't have a need for financial wealth
Yeah.
or anything like that. And I think that all of those points of view are really important to unpack and look at. From my standpoint, if you have a modality that changes people's lives and you are not being financially supported by it, that means that you need to be financially supported by something else. And that means that you're spending less of your life, less of your day, less of your energy doing the thing that you know can change lives. And if that's the case, you're literally robbing people, you're robbing the world of more of that healing modality because you're forcing yourself to have a day job. So if that's the case, A, how dare you? And B, what would it take to overcome that belief that you shouldn't be paid for this beautiful work, and allow people to come and receive it and allow that to be your main income generating source? Because when you do that, when you are allowing yourself to be supported by this work, the energy exchange of this physical reality is monetary. It is a give and take, and we are in a physical world that requires funds. And so we have to let go of all these points of view we have that money is bad and wrong in some way, and recognize that a lot of people get more out of a session because they showed up and paid for it. They put their butt in the seat in a different way when they had that energetic exchange involved in it. And I noticed that a lot in my hypnotherapy clients, that as soon as I started charging a little bit more, people were getting a lot more out of it. And so to think I should charge less when they might get less out of it if I charge less, it's like, who am I doing a favor for? It's not me and it's not them. Why would I choose to do it for less? So there's a lot of different angles to look at. I also have a course called Peace with Money that's about unpacking our money beliefs and looking at what's the story there, and do I want that to be my story anymore? But yeah, as far as working with my clients, I feel like you asked a few different questions there, and I'm trying to answer some of them, but that's one big one,
Yeah.
is that money is just an energy, and an energy that wants to come and play with you. And it's also an energy that allows people to show up and receive, even if they're the ones giving you the money. So that's a really beautiful conversation to be inside of. But also, to go back to one of the questions I think I pulled out of there, was that the people that I work with are not just looking at how much can I charge for this, but they're really connected to, this is work that I want to be bringing forward. And so the lie is, it's not safe to be mystical and magical. I know you have a past of like, I should hide this and I shouldn't talk about it, but then no, wait, everything is different when I do. And I had that too. I grew up in a pretty Christian community when I was a kid, and I was raised believing in a lot of pretty far out spiritual stuff. And the conversation at home was like, yeah, we talk about this at home, but it's probably better if you don't talk about it with your friends. And I think a lot of people in this, I don't want to call it new age, but in this like spiritual evolutionary kind of conversation, have either ancient witch wounds that say we get burned at the stake for being this far out, or we have experiences from our own childhoods or lives that say it's better to have this conversation at home or have this conversation only with people who agree with you, because otherwise you'll be ostracized or cast out or judged or made wrong or thought crazy. And so to go out in the world and encourage people to broadcast their magic and get visible and do that, there's always going to be a lot of tension with it. There's a lot of resistance to getting visible because we're not sure that it's safe. And so for anybody out there who's listening, who's maybe on that side of the coin, the phrase that my mom always says to me is, we don't get killed for it this lifetime. And so if you're bottling up your magic, find people who can hold you in it and know that it's okay right now. That A, it's okay to be judged, but B, it's okay to turn your magic all the way the fuck on. Excuse my French.
Oh my gosh. That was amazing. No, seriously, that was really, really good. And it's so funny when you say about like stigma from like, you know, being burned at the stake like in a previous life. I think there was a phase in my journey where like my feet would be extremely cold. You know, my rest of my body's fine. And I'm like, babe, I don't know what's up with my feet. Like, you know, talking to my husband, I'm like, I must have got them chopped off in some other lifetime, you know, like, because it just didn't make any sense to me. Cause, you know, I was like undoing a lot. And that was also like a pivotal point where I'm like, okay, this is the path I'm going down, you know, and it was really, really uncertain. And there was some fear, you know, but, you know, I said my prayers, meditate and everything like that. And then that fear went away, and inadvertently my excessively cold feet kind of went away too.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, our bodies are sometimes more aware than we are that something is shifting or something is happening. But yeah, that reaffirming, and I think that's why mindset work is so important, because our body's going to have a response to what we're doing. But are we willing to be with ourselves, be with our body, and like remind us that we are safe, that it is okay, and that we're going to maybe be uncomfortable sometimes moving forward. That doesn't mean we don't move forward.
Yes, exactly. You still move forward even though you're uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can trust that you are on a path, that it is calling you forward, that it isn't an accident, that this idea or this project or this business or this next step is occurring to you. Like it's poking at you because it's yours already.
Yeah. I'm a believer that we are all born with some type of gift inside, and it is those ideas, it is those little things that seem far-fetched. But when you do the mind work and you really surrender and undo all the ego or whatever programming that's there that was put upon you from something else, whether it's genetics or environment, whatever, when you undo all that and really go for it, take the action towards that idea and listen to the little voice, so many synchronicities start coming.
Yeah. It becomes undeniable that you are definitely moving the right direction.
Yeah. And I think like that's the thing I feel like people don't talk about so much, like the synchronicities. You know, when you hear about synchronicities, everybody goes back to Carl Jung and the book he made about it, but you don't hear people sharing so much about their own subjective synchronicities that started taking place, you know, when they started being more true to that little pulse inside, you know, the little voice inside. So with you and your journey, what type of synchronicities have you?
So many. Oh gosh, it depends on the week, really. They look different at different times. This week I'm having like a wild run of like angel numbers. My birthday is January 16th, and so I have always seen 116 like 3 or 4 times a day. It'll just pop up on the clock or on someone's driver's license plate, or it just shows up. And my partner's number is 137, and so I've been seeing 116 and 137 like everywhere. Like not normally it's 3 or 4 times a day. Right now it's like 10 to 12 times a day, and I'm just like boom, 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 there it is again, there it is again. And for me, I take that as like just a sign, hey, physical reality isn't all there is. You are a spiritual being. You are also creating your reality. And like something is telling you you're moving the right direction. Yes, move forward. Yes, you're here. Yes, this is happening. And so right now, the synchronicities for me look like just a lot of confirmation and affirmation of like, keep going, move forward. You've got this. You're here. This isn't all there is. And like, yes. A little anecdotal story about synchronicity. The reason I started my business was because I read a book. I read a book called, I'd read many of Brian Weiss's books, but I read Miracles Happen and realized that Brian Weiss, who I had loved his books for so long, he wrote Many Lives, Many Masters. He's an expert in past life regression therapy. I read his books, Miracles Happen, and realized that he does workshops. He does 5-day workshops where he teaches people his process. And after being really fascinated by his process already for many years, I did a little Google search and said, well, when's the next one? Where is it happening? Looked it up. This was in 2014. I looked it up and realized it was booked out, but I just put my name on the wait list because I was like, whatever. I was living on the other side of the country. His workshop was happening in Omega Institute in, I think, Rhinebeck, New York. And I was living in Half Moon Bay, California. I was in very much a starving artist cycle of life. I had like just left a commune living on the beach kind of life in Hawaii and was trying to work on a book I was writing, but really I was aimless. I had no purpose, not no purpose, but I was very much the wandering vagabond looking for her life. And so I had found myself in this little town. I was just trying to work on my book. I picked up a bartending job. I was living on very little money. And I got an email that said, I'm off the wait list if I can come up with $1,000 or whatever. And some weird things happened. Somebody paid me some money that they owed me. I got crazy tips for 2 nights in a row at the bar. Like within a week, that $1,000 just kind of landed. Wow. And so I sent it to them and was like, well, I still don't know how I'm going to buy the airfare, but I'm going to go. And so I managed to go a month or two later. And at that event, I was sitting next to what I realized was a lot of healers in the room, hadn't been in that kind of community before. And I asked the woman sitting next to me if she would do a hypnosis session on me to quit smoking. And she did. She did 2 sessions over the course of that week on me. That I felt like she had saved my life in a way. And so I left that workshop and immediately went to look up how do I get trained as a hypnotherapist. And within 4 months of that, I went through an intensive training program. I got certified as a hypnotherapist, and then I started my business. So reading that one book created this domino effect of me showing up to say yes to a few different experiences that then led to a 6-figure business that I've an entire career, a whole new way of life that I did not know was coming for me. Wow. So it was like a dramatic shift that all started from me being like, let me get curious about this. I'm interested. Let me see what's possible. I'll put my name in the hat. Oh, I'm in. Let me see what's possible. I'll put my name in the hat again. Oh, I'm in. Okay, well, what's the next step from there? And it's like, you do not know. I did not know I was going to be a podcast host and a business mentor and like a social media. I wouldn't call myself an influencer, but like broadcasting messaging on the internet. Like I did not know that was where I was headed. I did not have that dream at that time. But one little thing in front of the other, and the willingness to be curious and feel that resonance and say, it feels like a yes, I'll put my name in the ring. That's how this stuff happens.
Like literally, like I have goosebumps. I have goosebumps in your story because like for myself, it's kind of like the same thing. It's like one decision that I made had such a domino effect where, like, to your point, there's times right now, like in my day-to-day, I'm like, man, what the heck is going on? Like, I can't, this is real. Like my life has changed so much just because I stood up and spoke. I stood up and I used my voice, and then I started making new friends. And then inadvertently, all of the new friends that I have, they're spiritual, conscious, Christians, like the Christians that I didn't know existed. The regular people that have their struggles and they know they have their struggles. They're not trying to be perfect. They're like me, like we're all on our journey, all trying to do whatever is in our hearts for us to do. And I'm like, this is insane, because probably 2 years ago, I'm like, I know I need like different people in my life. At the time, I didn't know how I was going to meet those different people. It was just like a little thing I wrote down. I'm like, I know I need a different type of circle, that would be uplifting and supportive, and we think the same way with similar values, and we just build each other up as we're all marching towards what it is in our heart.
Yeah. And that was the beginning of that showing up. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know where it's coming from, but like I'm willing to recognize that I have a desire or a need or like a passion for creation that needs to be met.
Yeah. And it's like, as we're digging into more and more and more like spiritual stuff that I'm reading, it's making me realize how much like we are supposed to be creators.
That's what we're here to do, is make things. Yeah, make things happen and like play with reality and see how much greater it can get.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that you, like, before reading the book, you were in a compound living the beach life. So like, I guess what led to that season?
Yeah, so I actually wrote a book about this. It's called Wild Hearts Rise Up. It kind of recaps the story of how I stepped into leadership in my life and my business. But when I finished college, I was 22. I had gone the college route of like drinking a lot. And when I finished college, I just didn't want a dead end job. That's all I knew. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I didn't want a job that I hated, and I didn't want to get stuck in something for the next 40 years. So I kind of avoided it. And I knew that I wanted to travel. And so I started this cycle of work really hard at some job I don't care about, quit, and go travel. And so I started doing that, and I would just be in the States in the summer, usually driving to visit friends and family, driving to music festivals and having beautiful adventures, and then work for a few months at a restaurant or a bar or somewhere and build up some cash and then buy a flight. And usually I didn't have much money for the actual trip, but I had enough to get there. And so I would go gypsy, wander, vagabond around different countries. Or that one summer or winter before I started my business, I was in Hawaii. And so it wasn't a compound. It was like an eco village that really was like a hippie commune kind of. But I was only there for a few months before I had an epiphany, which I wrote about in my book, Wild Hearts Rise Up, that led me to realize the one thing I knew I wanted to do was finish the book that I was writing at the time. And I wasn't going to do it on a commune in Hawaii with all these people. I needed somewhere to focus. And so I decided to come back to the States. And that led me to the beginning of that sequence. But yeah, my pre-business, entrepreneurial life was very much wandering vagabond, hippie kid.
But like, I feel like, I don't know, sometimes I wish I had that. Like, I was so structured in my life just because of, my parents and all that stuff. I come from like a Jamaican background, so they tend to be like, and you have to follow the path that they said is good for you, type of thing. And but like, one thing I'm noticing is, even in those seasons where it's not your, I don't know what to say, like, I guess ideal, but you learn a lot of skills.
Oh my God, yeah. I had a lot of development as a character. I needed to evolve from a lot of trauma that I had experienced. And so my traveling in my 20s was very much focused around reinventing myself and learning about who I could be when I wasn't around people who knew me as a certain thing. And I needed that. I needed new layers to be released to like start unleashing myself from the depression and anxiety and stuff that I had gathered in my youth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is true of everyone. We have layers we need to shed.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's what like literally I was gonna say, like, yeah, I developed a lot of layers too from, which did lead, I think I have functional depression. I have no idea, but definitely a lot of anxiety and overthinking. And
Yeah.
to your point, when I started undoing all of that, the anxiety and overthinking faded away. And then
Mm.
also being more of my real self.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel really excited and lit about that right now. So one of the I've you read my bio. I have a lot of modalities and certifications under my belt. I think a lot of healers do that. We call them DLOS, does lots of stuff. Yeah, but one of the big catalysts in my own evolution, one of the things that has more than anything else allowed me to drop the old story of who I was and create one that felt more empowering, that felt more, like you said, my true self, is non-ordinary states of consciousness. And that's something we can tap into through meditation, through energy work. There's a modality called access consciousness that I love that gets me to that place of like, who am I now? Who do I want to be now? But yeah, one that I've been playing with a lot recently is psilocybin. So I got licensed as a psilocybin facilitator in the state of Oregon, and am like continually being blown away watching how that structure of I am an anxious person or I am a depressed person and I have this like story of my life that has led me to this as my reality. Getting to watch people tap into oneness, tap into an infinite array of possibilities, and then come back to reality and say, you know what, that story I'd been carrying with me all this time is not who I'm going to live as now. So, yeah, I guess I'm bringing that up to say anything is possible. Whoever you think you are right now and the limitations you've bought into as true and real about you are not, they're not static, they're not stuck, that we are capable of radical change. We are capable of huge evolution as people and as a people. And I think our willingness to show up for whatever that thing is that's poking at you. I know the tools that I love and that I use that I feel like are the ones, but I also know that everybody resonates with a different modality, with different sets of tools.
Yeah.
So I guess my encouragement to everyone out there is find the tools that sing the song of your heart. Like find the tools that really resonate for you and practice them and learn them and show up for them and use them, because there's nothing so important about our past that's worth, compromising the potential of our future for.
Yeah. There's two things. One, like that's an excellent statement because literally the only people who benefit from your past stories are the people who are still living in the past and want to hang on to it and want to talk about it with you.
Yeah.
I felt, like I think once I really let go of my past, I catapulted forward. There's nothing heavy holding me down anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I felt lighter. Even my body felt lighter. I had more energy to get out of the house, So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, so going back to, you said it's psilocybin, right?
Psilocybin, yeah.
Psilocybin. Okay. How does that relate to, I guess, it's like a ceremony, right? Because I don't know anything about this. So is it like a ceremony or like what is it specifically?
Yeah, so it has been legalized in the state of Oregon, and you do it through a licensed service center. So it's a little bit more clinical than the traditional ceremony, everybody sitting in a room with a shaman kind of person. It's designed to, the psilocybin itself has a way of taking the aperture, the point of view you have of your life, and opening it up so that suddenly more brain synapses, more neural pathways, more possibilities are available for you to choose. What the actual setting looks like is some prep sessions to get really clear on what your intention is, get clear on how the day is going to go. And then the journey day, which is where you ingest the psilocybin, we sit in a room, and most of the time people put on an eye mask and basically sit in meditation instead of a psychedelic journey where you're out having an adventure, or what it used to look like for me was I'm at a concert and everything's crazy. And or we're in the woods and we're going on a trip. Like, it's a sitting in a room with some really beautiful music playing and allowing yourself the time and space to go inward. And with that altered state of consciousness kind of supporting you, look at what's been locked up and what is ready to be sort of reorganized in you to create more ease, more joy, more love, more beauty, more enthusiasm for living moving forward. And then the most important part, in my opinion, is what comes after the journey day. And that's deep integration work of like, okay, we had a new awareness. You had an epiphany, you had an aha moment. Now, how do you go and bring that back into the life that you're living right now? How do you actually put that into practice to support you to keep that knowing and not slip back into the old neural pathway, which is the neural pathway that brought you to this experience in the first place, of like something you wanted to change. Our brain is designed to slip back into the groove. And
Yeah.
what psilocybin gives us is a leg up on getting out of that groove and finding a new groove. And so after the fact, it takes some practice, it takes some legwork, it takes some intentional thinking and journaling and being with, how do I bring this into my life and keep it?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. And it reminds me of like I did some reading about like quantum mechanics, and there was a phrase, a portion of it about how your neurons, the neural pathways work in your
Yeah.
brain, where they're basically kind of everything is like potentiality. But then when you have an intention, which nobody can really define what attention is, when
Yeah.
you have intention, then you start forming new neural pathways. But to your point, you can easily slip back into the old ones because those neural pathways are so strong.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, with the integration work, you're basically trying to make those new neural pathways that were formed during the journey to become stronger than the old ones. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a workout. That's what mindset work is you're literally building the muscle of a new way of being. And if you build that muscle long enough, then your brain will just use that muscle now. It doesn't have to be reminded as often to go there. So it's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really cool. And then that leads me into the next question. I think on your bio, you have Access Consciousness Bars Facilitator. So, what does that look like?
Yeah. So access consciousness is like a whole school of thought. Like, people say the law of attraction, and you think of all the different books you may have read about the law of attraction. Access consciousness is like a whole wealth of tools and classes and like processes. Some of them are verbal processing and some of them are hands-on actual like body work. The access consciousness bars is a process of 32 points on the head that you lay down, and somebody basically puts their hands on your head and says the magic words to run different energies, energy centers that are in your skull. And they say the worst that can happen is you feel like you got a great massage. The best that can happen is your whole life will change. So again, talking about synchronicities, I had a 5-minute introductory bars session done on me, and my whole life changed. 5 minutes. And so I was like, okay, this is for me. I'm going to go deeper into this. I'm going to look into it. So I took a bars class, and again, a whole new layer of my scarcity mindset, my poverty story shed. And suddenly I was making more money in my business. And it was like, felt like it was overnight from before I took that class to after I took that class. And every time I would get my bars run, I would just feel so good. I would feel like all those anxious, tense, triggery things were just gone. I was like lightness. It was like all the stuff I had been carrying, all the implants, all the judgments, all the projections, expectations, all the things that I thought were me or my job to hold on to were just melting away from me. And what was left was beingness, of aliveness, enthusiasm. And so I went and got certified as a bars facilitator. I would say it's one of the coolest tools out there. And it is one of the reasons why I am who I am now.
Mm.
One of the main reasons why is because of access consciousness and because of how many bars sessions and bars classes and I've given and received.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now you have my mind ticking, because in my journey right now, like as of today, there's a childhood experience that I went through that has like a deep, deep, deep sense of guilt. A
Mhm.
huge, 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 huge sense of guilt. I've undone a lot of it, but I still feel like that core of guilt is there because I was a child when this happened. So,
Mm.
like, would you say it helps with like those deeply rooted?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what got me first with hypnotherapy was that we could discover the root cause and rework it. What I love about access consciousness is you can release and clear and change things without ever even needing to know the root cause, which
Oh,
seems counterintuitive. Like, how could I clear something if I never figure out what it is? But
yeah.
that's also like, where have we made it so important to understand absolutely everything with our thinking mind when really this isn't a thinking problem? This is an emotional problem. This is maybe a physical problem, but really it's an energetic, conscious, or subconscious awareness challenge that's
Yeah.
showing up. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's lots of access consciousness clearings we could do on it. Like everywhere I've made this guilt important, everywhere I've attached myself to this guilt, or made it my job to be guilty, we destroy and uncreate it. And then there's this access consciousness clearing statement that sounds like gobbledygook, but it's basically just short speak for like a magic wand of clearing the energy of this. And it goes right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys, pobads, and beyonds. So we bring up an energy. Everywhere this guilt is still rooted in me, and everywhere I've been making it mine, I destroy and uncreate it. Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, poc, all nine shorts, boys, pobads, and beyonds. And that starts to dissipate and release the thing in you that you think needs to hold on to that. And that
Yeah.
can start to move it out of you. But of course, also getting a hands on bars session where somebody's holding your head, allowing this stuff to sort of clear and release.
Mm-hmm.
I can barely explain how it feels. It feels light. It feels spacious. But what I do know is life is different afterwards, which seems like such a trite thing to say, I know. But
No, I get it.
that's yeah.
Yeah.
If you've seen it happen, if you've had an energy work session and you're like, wow, I'm different now, this
Yeah.
is that on steroids.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Like for me, it's interesting because I haven't really worked with a lot of spiritual practitioners like that.
Mm.
You know, a lot of the stuff I've done has just been a lot of self, and like, I stumble upon a book, and I'm very introspective. So a lot of it's just been my self work. But
Yeah.
now I feel like I'm in a phase where it's kind of time to work with practitioners. Like I did a Reiki session, Reiki.
Reiki.
Reiki. I did a
Reiki.
session. I'm horrible with pronunciations.
I like it.
So I did a session like in 2012, and at the time, like I was feeling really alone and like aimless. I had wanted to go back to New York. I was in a cycle of like horrible relationships, and so like that was like, and I was still not awake. Like I was still, but I was like, you know what? Let me give this a try.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it. And then come 2015, like I was able to move back to New York and everything. And then like I met my husband. And so that kind of stopped the vicious cycle of the traumatic relationships. And I met someone who's super loving. I was like, what? You exist? Like, that was like my first glimpse into like loving people, So, and then I haven't done anything like that since, but yeah, no, I'm definitely feeling like it's time to get rid of like the unconscious stuff, because I feel like I've really tackled all the stuff I'm aware of, but it's the
Yeah.
unconscious stuff it's time to shed. And I feel like it's important for me to shed it. I'm going to a retreat in November, but like I'm even curious about this because um, I strongly feel like it's important for me to shed it before I start like this next phase that I feel like the door is literally about to open into my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say, because I'm sure people are listening to this like right now, who are also curious and interested. Access Consciousness is in 170 different countries. So you can actually go to accessconsciousness.com, look up bars, facilitators, and find somebody probably in your town, in your city, or at least in your area that does it and would love to give you a session. So it's readily available, but also for just to speak to you and probably other people like you and me who are out there, you can trust that knowing if it's time to receive energy work and play the field is my recommendation. Just because you tried Reiki doesn't mean that Reiki is the only one out there. There may be other energy workers or modalities or practitioners out there that are actually your jam. So if you have a Reiki session or if you have an access session and it's just not quite your jam, don't write off energy work or modalities like that in the future, because they're all different. Even though I think they're all working with the same magic and the same consciousness, they're all different, and different people's bodies and different people's minds are going to respond more wildly to different ones. So don't give up on finding some kind of energy work that works for you, even if you have a weird practitioner or a modality that doesn't hit for you.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. That's really
Play
good
the field.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Molly, for those who, let's say, they're starting to become awake and they're realizing like, I don't want to wander anymore. What would be your top, let's say maybe 3 pieces of advice that you would give to them?
Yeah. Well, this is funny because the catchphrase that I use at the end of my podcast episodes is kind of 3 pieces of advice. So I'll start there. Ask big questions, take bold action, and remember that you're here for a reason. Those are my 3 pieces of advice. Ask big questions. Like, curiosity is your greatest asset. Curiosity is the difference between a complacent, comfortable, like content life and a thriving chaos of creation extravaganza. I would choose the extravaganza. It may be confusing and it may be fucking weird at times. Excuse my language again. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the show.
It's okay. Okay.
That the question of you, the question of your life, the question of what you're asking for, what would it take for this to show up? What if that would be possible for me? Who do I want to be today? How could I show up to this interaction and like create as much magic as possible? Like, your asking of questions creates, and it creates opportunities and possibilities that weren't there before you got curious. So get curious and take bold action. I say this a lot, but you cannot think your way to clarity. Clarity comes through action. Your actions, your willingness to experiment, you're taking a step just because it's the one step you know is in front of you. It may not even lead to what you want. You can always take another step next. You can choose in 10-second increments, but step boldly. Take action. Show up for that one next thing. Even if it's like an hour of research is the one next thing. Go down that rabbit hole. See what you find. Explore and experiment and experience, because that's where the clarity will come from. I had to go deep into, I'm a hypnotherapist now, to realize that it was actually something past that was for me. And then remember, you're here for a reason. You came into this body because you're supposed to be here, and you're having this episode show up in your life, or these new ideas and insights come into your life because they're for you. So trust that. Trust that this isn't an accident. The synchronicity is taking you somewhere, and you can trust that you are on your path, even if it gets messy, even if it gets weird, even if it sucks sometimes, that there's no fucking this up. You're moving in the direction you're supposed to be moving in.
That's right. I love that so much. I love that so much. And where can people find you?
Yeah, Wild Hearts with an S, riseup.com is my main website with all my courses and programs and offerings like that. I'm on Instagram, wild_1, ONE_rising. That's where I'm broadcasting whatever insights, inspiration, and pep talks I've got for you, for entrepreneurs and for everyone. And my psilocybin facilitation business is called magicfacilitation.com. And I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone about that. If you think that a psilocybin journey might be for you, it's free to have an introductory call. So you can hop on magicfacilitation.com, and that's Magic Facilitation on Instagram also.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on my show. I loved all the information that you shared. It was definitely a learning experience for me.
Thank you. I'm so glad I got to be here. And yeah, I love what you're up to in the world. Thanks for showing up.